Hey everybody, thanks for joining and welcome. We appreciate you joining us here in let's see, middle of January. It's cold for some of us, a little bit warmer for others, like Wick and Bruce that we're joined with today. Very happy to have both Wick and Bruce joining us. Wick is a mutual client. I'll let him give a little bit more of an introduction on himself. And Bruce is a longtime friend here of Foundation Software, coming to us from ProNovos. So very lucky to have them both. I think we got a really good topic today. It's the information bridge between field and office. It's a holistic approach, as you can see here. Bruce and Wick, again, I think they're going to give you a really strong perspective on how you can improve. I know everyone's looking for an edge right now, especially with the climate that we're in. So I think between the two of them, you're going to learn a lot today on how you can really improve. Specifically on field and office and maybe some other areas as well. Just as a heads up too, for those of you that are Foundation clients or Payroll for Construction clients or McCormick clients for that matter, they will also be presenting at our user conference here in March of 2022. So if you haven't signed up, I would encourage you to do so. And there's going to be some more information along this lines, but new information, new content, that'll be great. So if you enjoy what they're presenting today, definitely come back and see us. But you won't be left out here today. This is all kind of in its own information panel here. So without any further ado, I will kick it off to them, and then I'll jump back in later and give you guys some more information on Foundation Software, and how you can get a hold of us if you have any more questions. But Bruce?
All right, Eric, I appreciate that introduction, and I thank you for the opportunity here. My name is Bruce Orr, and I am the founder of a technology company called ProNovos. And just a quick overview of what we do: ProNovos builds data-driven solutions for construction professionals. And I am elated to be joined here with, as Eric said, a mutual customer, and I like to say a good friend as well, Wick Zimmerman.
Thanks, Bruce. Certainly glad to be here as well. Wick Zimmerman, CEO and co-founder of OTL. We're a specially designed build firm engaged in theme construction, water features, artificial rock work, zoos, aquariums, golf courses, back when they used to build golf courses and the like. And we've been Foundation customers and Payroll for Construction customers for about 15 years now. Pretty familiar with the platform, obviously. And I met Bruce probably about 4 years ago, and I've been a ProNovos client ever since then as well. So familiar with both products, and we'll talk some about how they've helped us in our business over the years.
Yeah, great. Well, so speaking of that, Wick, I just want to say, over the years, we've built solutions for medium to large size general contractors. And we focused on GCs, frankly, because they had the budget to pay for cutting edge technology. And someone, it might have been you, Wick, but someone once told me that if you want to see the latest technology in construction, you look at what the big GCs are doing. And honestly, that never sat right with me. Why should only large GCs have access to the latest technology that gives them the competitive advantage? I come from a long line of hardworking subcontractors, and I know their struggles, the risks associated with and challenges associated with labor, ever-changing schedules that are out of your control, escalating material costs. I mean, I can go on, but you also have that impending possibility of going bust on the job. And I understand it, and that's why ProNovos spent the better half of 2021 building a construction intelligence cloud specifically for subcontractors. So if you are a Foundation customer or thinking about using Foundation, you're in the right place. And you'll have access to a technology ecosystem that's guaranteed to give you the competitive advantage that most large GCs provide. So when you think of ProNovos, it's us serving subcontractors, building tools around collaboration, obviously analytical tools, and it's designed to get more out of Foundation and Procore. We'll talk a little bit about that a little more. And the early release of our construction intelligence cloud is of no cost. It's, hey, it's this whole foundation ecosystem, great partners. And again, we'll talk about the connectivity between foundation and Procore, everything you need to build and analyze your information. However, you came here to learn about three things that Mr. Wick Zimmerman will tell us all about. So I turn it over to you, Wick.
Well, thanks, Bruce. Thanks. Foundation is a very robust platform, and for those of you that are using it, are familiar with it. But there's a tremendous amount of data in that in there, and even with its very good custom reporting capabilities, and for those of you that have experienced the world of queries, there's just an incredible amount of information available. What ProNovos has done for us is make that so much more accessible. When I first met Bruce, I told him, I know we have all this data. We spend time doing queries and spreadsheets and reports and all kinds of stuff, and at the end of it, you're out of time, or you're exhausted or weary from it, and you don't really get to use the information the way you need to. So ProNovos has given us that ability to have real-time information right out of Foundation without any kind of duplicate data entry or manipulation of information. So it's fantastic. And the last couple of years has been particularly helpful. I'm sure you've all had a fun time the last 2 years. Business in general has been interesting and somewhat disruptive. And in the beginning of 2020, 2 years ago, we as a company were poised for an excellent year of growth. And we had a good portion of the year in backlog. Our jobs as a specialty subcontractor are typically not terribly large and not terribly long duration. So if we have backlog that covers us for 9 months or so in the future, that's pretty good for us. So we don't have typically multi-year contracts like some larger GCs would have. And so we as a result keep a pretty close eye on our projections, our backlog, and where we are. So come March of 2020, everything changed dramatically. And initially it was the shock of, hey, what's going on, what's going to be the impact. We're a international firm and work all over the world. So at the time, in March of 20, we had work going in, I think, 9 different states in the US. And so just keeping up with the ever-changing regulations by state, county, and local authorities, and then the travel restrictions of moving crews from place to place. We self-perform our work, so we are constantly moving people from project to project. That became almost a full-time job for some folks in my company. But once the shock sort of wore off and reality set in, I wanted to look at where we were going to be for the rest of 2020, and also look at some of the the long-term impact of what had transpired and what was going to transpire. So in order to do that, I like to look at multiple scenarios because there's usually not just one that's going to work. Typically, we'll look at best case, worst case, and what we call the most likely case, which is somewhere in between. At that point in time, we had pretty good idea. For the most part, the work under contract was continuing. We had some shorter term delays, particularly here in California where we're based. We also have an office in Dallas and do quite a bit of work in Texas. That was less impacted on the work in progress. But we did start to see some delays because of moving crews around to avoid having, if there was an outbreak of some type, taking out an entire crew. So we would have guys split up in different sections of a job, which isn't the most efficient way to do it. So it certainly costs us some profitability as well as delays to the work under contract. And the other piece was work that we had that we called on our hot list, which made up the bulk of the backlog later in the year, was certainly in jeopardy. There were a number of projects that were ready to sign contracts that were postponed. Some even haven't actually executed by now, 2 years later. Most of them did get going in 21, but we wanted to look at that hot list backlog not only for the rest of 2020, but also into 21, 22, and 23. And also, I wanted to be able to look at that not only in total, but by market segment and by geographic area. At the time, we were pretty heavily invested in retail entertainment, still are, and actually retail entertainment came back incredibly quickly. But things like office buildings, corporate headquarters, and so forth, that work obviously slowed to a snail's pace. So, but in order to do all of that, we needed to obviously have all the information, which we feel we did, and then have access to it, which is where ProNovos and Foundation come into play. So next slide, Bruce.
Yeah, sure.
So, as we move into talking about corporate resource planning, it obviously starts with a plan, or a series of plans, or a plan with multiple scenarios. And I think everybody probably is familiar with this. Our project teams are pretty used to looking at resource loading of schedules. We certainly do that here because, like I say, we have guys that are good at waterproofing or painting or plumbing, but not necessarily the alternate trade. So we are moving people around quite a bit. So we do like to keep track of who needs to be where and when to be efficient. So once you have your plan, then to figure out your corporate overhead resource schedule, so to speak, there's a couple things that you need. One is some statistical data. And the second part is really the capacity or capability of each of the various positions that you have. And it doesn't have to be obviously down to lower level administrative people. For us, we look at business development, estimating, project management, supervision, and that type of thing. So then, I like to look at our planning in that way, in the same flow as work goes through the company. So it starts with business development, goes to estimating, and then to operations. So we follow that same type of flow. You can go to there you go, Bruce. So you can actually go to the next slide, it's fine. So for us, we look at our business development funnel, for example, starts at the top with what we call touches, then moves to leads, opportunities, and ultimately jobs or contracts. I know you guys may have different ways of doing that. You may have more or less, and obviously they could have completely different names, but it's not really relevant. For me, I start at the bottom, and if we have a plan to do a certain dollar amount of revenue, those are the jobs or contracts that come out at the bottom. I think everybody's familiar with hit rate, or the conversion rate from jobs we bid to jobs that become contracts. And for us, that average is about 23%, varies by market segment and type of work. We do design only work, we do design build work, and we do bid build work. So each of those has its own kind of hit rate associated with it. So once we look at that historical data and we understand the conversion rate between those various stages, then we can work backwards and say, if we're going to do $60 million in revenue, then we need to bid $240 million worth of work. If our conversion, if it takes 15 leads to get one opportunity out of it, then we need to to have whatever 3.6 billion or 3.2 billion in leads out there. So you then have a very good understanding of what's going to be required based on your historical averages to get where you want to be. Yeah, the next slide, I guess, Bruce. You can then, we have what we call capability models. You all may do it different ways, but we look at, for instance, like an estimator or senior estimator should be able to estimate about $75 million worth of work in a year. Senior project manager, we assume and have seen, can manage about $9 million worth of revenue for us. And again, we're self-performed. We do subcontract some work, so we have some subs to manage, but there's a lot of moving pieces there. So general contractor obviously may have completely different numbers and capability models, but we will utilize that information. And you can see here with what Bruce is showing on the screen, it will tell you basically the number of people you need in each position to support your plan. So this is particularly helpful. You can look at it a couple ways. One is if you're planning and your company is in a growth mode, which is where my company is, we can anticipate the overhead that we're going to need to support the field operations, because again, that's what it's all about. I know I've run into people through my career where they think the field exists to support the office. So I'm a pilot, so the analogy I use is, is the controller on the ground so I can be in the air, or am I in the air so the controller can be in the ground? Same thing with the field and the office. The office wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the field. Wouldn't be any need for it. So we need to be able to support the field and have them be efficient. And for any of you that have followed John Killingsworth work, and I know he's done some of these webinars as well, when you make an adjustment to the overhead, that's a vertical line, and so the timing of it's important. And for me, I have always found that the preceding a growth stage is the most efficient overall way to handle a growth cycle. Then we have the overhead in place before the big crunch of field operations growth. Others may have different philosophies there. There's obviously risk associated with that, particularly if a portion or a good portion of your growth is based on work not currently under contract. But again, if you have the ability to look at all this information, you can make much more educated guesses. So far from an exact science, but with that information, it certainly makes it much easier to deal with.
And I guess, Wick, the key is you have access to this information and you implemented processes to help you take action and measure along the way. That's essentially what I'm hearing.
That's it. And like I say, in the old days, we spent so much time trying to mine the data that we had that we weren't really getting a lot of use out of it. I mean, it was great to be able to look back at historical stuff, and we all do that. But in my mind, you're not looking in the rearview mirror because you're not going that way. I mean, you do need to look back at history and gather some of the stuff like the statistical information. But in reality, we're all going forward, and we need to be intelligent and have the tools available to us to make the most of that. And that's where data analytics is most exciting to me, and the ability to do some of the stuff between looking at historical past and predicting where we're going in the future. So Bruce, you were the one that showed me the greatest example of that when we first met, and that's always stuck with me.
Yeah. So you set up a plan to execute for the year, sometimes multiple years, and then you use that data to align your resources from a corporate level to make sure you have the right people in the right place. And then I think based on our outline of this webinar, the next thing is the toolkit for successful project execution, right?
Absolutely. That's where the rubber hits the road. So that's the part
And
that
I
really
gotta
matters.
say, sorry, yeah, I gotta say too, Wick, you know, you're the CEO, you don't necessarily go in the field like you used to. And I thought, instead of you talking about this, how cool would it be to bring on someone that has experienced this fairly recently, and now he has come to work for us. So we got Kevin Bright that's going to talk about project execution. You worked with him a long time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Kevin,
Very cool.
hey
Hey, Wick,
man,
how's it going?
Hey, good, Kevin. How are you? I guess I can't tell
Doing
too
good.
many stories then because you could call me out.
Right. Keep you honest.
Hopefully you
So
agree with everything I said so far.
no, it's been great so far. It's bringing me back to when we used to work together. So like Bruce was saying, I think I'm gonna pull up the platform and kind of walk through some of the tools I know I was using when I was the project manager for you at OTL, and some of the ways I use the ProNovos data analytics tools. So let me.
All right, Kevin, I think you're the presenter now.
All right. All right, so what I'm logged into right now is a project within the ProNovos platform. So where you typically start is on the overview page. You can see all the different tools on the left. So you've got your documents, forms, drawings, RFIs, submittals. But Wick, I thought the fun one to touch on today would be a specific report that I know we used a lot for our job reviews at OTL, which was the cost complete report.
That's
so
a great one.
yeah, if you hop to the project insights tab here, what you're able to see is the project financials pulling directly out of Foundation and being displayed here for the project manager. And what was really nice about this report was when I was working with Wick at OTL, we would always have a lot of back and forth about when should the project manager make official updates within Foundation. You know, Wick was always looking at it from an executive standpoint where, hey, he's got to go to the bonding agency, the accountants, all the adjustments in Foundation really need to be the final adjustments. And I was always looking at it from more of a project management aspect where, hey, I kind of want to tinker, do what if scenarios. If I buy out this sub for this amount, how is that going to affect my cost to complete? So we were always having this back and forth about when should those adjustments happen in Foundation. And what we ended up doing was we'd say, okay, we're going to save the final adjustments to make in Foundation, but then the project manager, you go ahead and do a cost complete analysis with it in Excel. And I think that drove Wick even crazier because every project manager had a different Excel sheet that we used. And he would always joke to us like, hey, I need the magic decoder ring to understand what the heck you did here to get to the final number you did. So we kind of got stuck between this rock and a hard place of, hey, you know, Foundation wasn't the right place to kind of do that what if analysis, and Excel was kind of too custom to each project manager. And that's how we ended up using the cost complete tool in ProNovos, where all the data was still flowing directly from Foundation. So it's the most recent accounting information, all the most recent job to cost information. But then it was able to basically be that project manager sandbox where they could go in and make custom adjustments. And then Wick would still have that kind of final review to say, okay, I see what you did here. I either believe what you're saying or, hey, I think you actually have more contingency you can give to me here. I'm going to pull more contingency out of the job to make that adjustment. So what I'm showing here is kind of the summary page, but where the real meat and potatoes of this report comes from is this forecast tool here, where if I want to go in for a specific cost code, and let's say I finish buying out my plumbing excavation and backfill, and I save $10,000 on it, I can go in and make the adjustment. It's going to update the remaining cost to complete. When I accept the changes here, it's going to flow back to that summary page. And then that's when Wick can do that final review in our weekly job or our monthly job reviews meeting. So it was a real powerful tool to kind of be that go-between between the project management team and the executive team. And that's just kind of one example of how you can use the data analytics as a project manager to really understand what's happening on a project. Some other reports that I always like to use were things like this one right here, where basically kind of on one page, you can basically see a summary of everything that's going on your project. So we know the project financials are always critical, but then things related to RFIs, submittals, punch lists, those are sometimes more of the leading indicators of where you might be headed on a project and where you might have trouble. And something that always drove me crazy as a project manager was when I had to jump across 6 different systems to get all that information and see it in one place. And ProNovos is able to take all that information, put it in the data warehouse, and really give you analytics across the whole project, whether it's financials, project management, whatever it might be. And then what's really powerful is you can kind of go from that macro view and get more granular into the micro view. So for a quick example here, if I'm looking at my labor budget today and I want to understand kind of what's driving that, I can drill into an additional report here, and it's going to give me a summary of everything that's happening on that project from a labor standpoint. So I can expand this bottom table here, and I can see each of my individual cost codes of what are my hours today, what was my original budget, how does that affect my labor rate. But that's a lot of information, and it might be information overload if you're looking at hundreds of rows of data. So it's sometimes more handy is we're able to build these rules that can show, example, what are the different cost codes that I've gone over budget on. So I can see this cost code 033004, we've experienced a bust. I can click on it and it's going to filter out all the data so I can see kind of what's driving that bust. So in this example, I can see not only did I go over in my hours, but I also went over on my labor rate. And that's a really powerful tool because the quicker you can kind of get to those specifics of what's driving any problem you might be having on a job, the quicker you're going to be able to address it. And that was always my experience as a project manager was typically when things went wrong on a project, it wasn't because people didn't know what they were doing or they messed up. It's usually because something was missed and you didn't catch it in time to fix it. And having tools like this that allow you to catch things as soon as things start to drift off, the more ability it gives you to jump in and correct them before they kind of get away from you there.
Yeah.
So those are a couple tools that I was using as a project manager when I was at OTL. I actually wanted to take one moment here to show a new tool that ProNovos is about to release that I think is super powerful. We've really focused so far about talking about your internal data as a contractor, but I think we all know that when you're working on a job site, you're not the only contractor there. Working with the other contractors is equally important, and how you aggregate and keep track of that data is really important to successful project execution. And as a subcontractor, probably the data source that I had to deal most with was a general contractor's Procore account. So what ProNovos has been able to do is basically sync a ProNovos project with a Procore project. So if I go into RFIs here, I can now see all the Procore RFIs related to that project pulling directly into ProNovos. So I'm not having to hop between systems. And then in addition to that, what I'm able to do is if I go to a specific RFI, I can link a Procore RFI to a ProNovos RFI. So as the GC is updating any information related to the RFI within Procore, that information is automatically flowing into my ProNovos account. So I'm not having to double enter the data, or I don't miss an email, and I miss out on an important update. So this is just another tool of how ProNovos is helping subcontractors manage the data related to project execution. And I know we're kind of coming up on time here, and I kind of jumped in. So, Wick and Bruce, I'll pass it back to you guys.
No, I appreciate that, Kevin. If you can make me the presenter, I'll wrap it up with a slide and pass it on to Eric.
That's pretty fantastic stuff there, really.
And that's what I'm talking about. Us, we're really focused on subcontractors and trying to make their lives easier. And as Eric mentioned, we are looking forward to the upcoming user conference in March of 2022. We will be presenting the Scan, Sync, Get Insights, and last but not least, the analytics marketplace only for foundation customers. This is no setup, no paying for any integration. You click the dashboards that you want, instant access to the foundation data. And with that said, Eric, I know we're a minute over. Sorry about that. I pass it over to you.
No. We appreciate all you guys, all the insights. I mean, seriously, that is so valuable. And I think, our customers and everyone that's out there today, potentially prospects, whoever's out there in the audience today, I think a lot of people really appreciate hearing it from people who have done it. And it was great that we had Kevin join us today, and obviously Wick. You've probably forgotten more about a lot of this stuff than a number of people out there. So we're lucky to have all this. This will be recorded, guys, but also if you're interested in learning more about foundation software, go to foundationsoft.com. My name is Eric Vittardi. I can be reached at edv@foundationsoft.com. We've been busy too, so obviously we've been working really hard to connect with ProNovos and provide you guys a really complementary solutions here. Obviously Bruce and I speak quite a bit, so we're always working to improve that and provide you guys as many tools as you can possibly find to improve your business. Also, we've added a couple estimating solutions, Estimating Edge recently, McCormick Systems, and then we have a payroll solution, Payroll for Construction, which Wick alluded to previously, the issue paychecks, direct deposits, W-2s, you name it too. So if you're interested in learning more, again, that's foundationsoft.com, or shoot me an email at that edv@foundationsoft.com. But hope you guys were able to learn something today. And if you're joining the user conference, stop by, say hello to Bruce, say hello to Wick, say hello to the team, say hello to me. If not, look forward to hearing from you guys soon. And thank you for attending.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye.